Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with Riot Kent. We're here for the patch 12.15 rundown. So this is the second to last patch of the first half of the set before we hit the mid set. 12.17 is the mid set. So we're definitely in that part now where like after 2 months of terrible balance and whatever and chaos, we finally got the set to where it's like kind of balanced. And so the patch is pretty small, but don't worry, a month later we're going to throw it all out for the mid set. So, it's the pattern continues. But yeah, we're here with a small patch and some changes just to try to refine it a bit. And so, yeah, how's it going, Ken?
Yeah, we're just basically looking to buff things this patch. I mean, you're going to see some nerfs, but our goals are just to open up as many different ways to play as possible. We don't want to be like nerfing the top, buffing the bottom, and then just kind of flip-flopping things. We just want to buff some things that aren't as often played, kind of give you different outs, some reroll comps, some, other strategies. So yeah, the buff patch.
Quick story aside, just to make a joke here. Lobby 2 was asking about this patch, and there was a player that was like, hey, this is going to be a small patch, right? We've got a bunch of tournaments and mid-set coming up. We don't want a bunch of change, right? And I jokingly said, no, it's actually our largest patch of all time. Kent touched every augment but two of them. We reworked the entire glove item system line, and we reworked six of the traits and touched 38 of the 58 champions. And then I put this was a joke, and immediately like three or four people in lobby 2 were like, damn it, I was looking forward to that. And it's like, what do you you know
I hope this patch is small. Wait, but you're changing everything? Yes, amazing.
So with that in mind, let's dive in and look at this small patch. So all right, first up
Yep.
on the trait side, only two changes, and they're very small. On the shimmer scale side, Heart of Gold has clearly been a weaker item that no one's excited to get, especially if it's your 2-1 item. So we're buffing that up. We're going to just undo that change where it now gives more gold. I think the item will be too strong now, but oh well, a world where a shimmer scale item's fun. Oh darn. Mogul's Mail also just a little underperforming, so we're giving it some of the health back on the stacks, no big deal. And then Goldmancer wasn't as good in hyper roll as it was supposed to be, so small buff for it just in hyper roll. So
Yeah, right now you kind of see hard gold, and you're like, oh, damn, I'm not getting a lot of gold like every round. But now with this change, you'll actually start getting gold. You get it on 2-1. You won't be as sad about it anymore. And Shimmer Scale in general has been like hard to play. It definitely caps out really high. So, but like having all of the items be really good is a good thing.
yep. Trainer, more Nomsy nerfs. Nobody likes Nomsy. Just kidding. These are actually Nomsy buffs. If you're willing to play 3 trainer. So if you're willing to play 2 trainer, you're going to get a little less damage. But if you're willing to play 3 trainer, this is actually quite a bit stronger. And so if you're one of those people that really likes to play 3 trainer with double chalice Nomsy, this should be good for you. You should have fun with this.
We are making Namzi 3 dreams come true. Jeweled Lotus, meditation, built different. Give her some ice cream cones. Your Namzi will wreak havoc. Lots and lots of trainer damage on 3. Trainer damage on 2 didn't really matter because like you're kind of using her mostly for the body and the burn. So you don't really care about the damage. The damage just comes down a little bit. But Namzi 3 should start hitting a lot harder.
Yep. Great. On the champ side, I'm just going to power through these and then we can go over them. Ezreal, definitely the weakest one cost. Buffing him a little bit at every level. Should be one of those things that, especially compared to like the Cannoneers and the other starts, was just really underperforming. So bringing Ezreal back a little bit. Senna, just a little bit of adjustment. We're pulling some of the power out of the autos and the Cannoneer procs, but putting some of the power back in the spell. Senna, kind of like a Caitlyn remix. So we just want the autos doing a little less, but the spell being like definitely the thing that kills you. Overall, it might be a bit of a nerf to Senna, but that's kind of what we want, to be honest. Kayn just gets a buff. Kayn's been kind of an uneventful champion, so it gets a little bit more health, a little bit more AD. Spell scales off AD, so that should be good. And then Twitch, sort of the final component of some early Swift Shot. And maybe even there's a world where now Twitch carry could work. Just a bit of an attack speed buff here. And again, that scales with things like Ginsu's and Swift Shot. So hopefully something like an Ezreal Twitch start can actually compare to like a Senna Jinx start.
The start of the game gets better, and also possible reroll comps go get better. For Senna, specifically on the magic damage, it's like this just as like a reminder, the AD part of her spell hits everyone in a circle, whereas the base magic damage only hits the main target. And so this kind of opens up, like, if you're smart about your position, you can block that magic damage from hitting your carry. The AD damage is not as high, so Senna won't one-shot that carry as easily. So this kind of adjustment should make her a lot healthier, and especially if you go for 3-star Senna, you should be able to one-shot things, but you should also still be able to position against her.
Yep. Cool. On the champ side, Lee Sin still kind of the underperformer of the Dragonmancer comp. Tempest as well. You're never really excited about a 2-star Lee Sin right now, which, again, for a 3 cost, we want you to be excited about like an early 2-star Lee Sin. So bringing that back on the option. We're going pretty light here. Just some attack speed. Since he's a melee champion, he's allowed to have slightly higher attack speed. Get that spell cast off quicker. Spell damage-wise, went pretty light. We don't want to like end up in a world where Lee Sin is like one-shotting teams again. But again, slight buff to Lee Sin just to bring him more in the meta. Xayah, as we talked about, definitely underperforming. Probably the most underperforming 4 costs. Has been a pain to balance. Dominated a lot of the early half of the set. Not so much this patch. Just giving her 50 HP to survive a little bit more. Take advantage of Rage Wing a little bit more now that it's been nerfed a couple times. And then a little bit of attack speed so that she can be the premier attack speed carry. Still want her using Ginsu. Hopefully this gets her back up to something like Corki's level without being overly dominant is kind of the hope. And then finally Shyvana. Shyvana gets a pretty big buff here, and that now the Flame Breath will always target the largest clump. This removes those floor cases where she would just like hit the Dragon Clawed frontliner. The price she pays for that buff is that she now needs 4 autos to cast instead of 2. And since she's a shapeshifter, now with the right amount of burst, you might be able to kill her before she transforms. This also will incentivize you if you want to put like Archangels and Hodge, get 2 tier items so that you can get that cast sooner. That might change some of your itemization options, but hopefully this makes Shyvana a little bit more stable of a champion.
Yeah, I want to touch on Shyvana some more. Basically, like, she was really, really reliably getting that cast off, and it's pretty early into the fight, and she breeds on the right clump, which was random before she ends the fight, basically ends the fight really, really fast. Now that slows down a little bit. She won't do the land and then do the flame breath until later into the fight. But she'll be a lot smarter with this flame breath. She'll target the largest clump, but also she'll like be smart enough to stand slightly farther away so that the cone hits more units rather than like going in their face and just wasting a large part of the cone. So overall, like, she's going to be a lot smarter, but because of that, we have to bring down the mana. On Lee Sin, if you watch patch post-mortem, we talked about how Dragonmancer is getting into a good spot, but mostly played with Volibear and Swain. We really want to make the other Dragonmancers playable too. This is one of the first steps. You'll see later we did some stuff with Ashe and Karma as well, but buffing up Lee Sin a little bit so that he's a possible out and a possible carry again.
Cool. All right, moving on. On the item side, Eternal Winter has been a bit of an overperformer and frankly just frustrating. So we're going to nerf it quite a bit, actually. It's going to go from 30% to a 20% attack speed slow. Attack speed slows are frustrating. We know that. But for now, this will bring it down. Still should be a good, counter option to something like Deja without being quite so dominant. Gargoyle Stoneplate has been the best tank item in the game by a significant margin. If you have a choice between Bramble and Dragonclaw in the early game or building a Gargoyle, it's always the Gargoyle. It's a little too dominant and a little too solves all your problems. So just nerfing it a very tiny amount. We still want it to be good, just not quite universally as good as it is before. And then Rocket Propelled Fist, also overperforming just a little bit. Just gets a little bit of a nerf. We want this item to be good, just trying to nudge it into balance, that's all.
Yeah, surprisingly, Rocket Propelled Fist. I think players expect Eternal Winter to be, really good in the data, not really the Fist, but the Fist is performing really, really well, and it has been. And so we're finally bringing it down a little bit, nudging it down again to 350 health. And with Gargoyle, we're not trying to make the item like bad or anything. We just want to open up other defensive options.
Yep. Cool. On the augment side, Eye of the Storm gets a buff. 5 more ability power into 15 more ability power. So just, small buff there, but should make that a little bit more exciting. It was one of the augments I think a lot of people were excited for early on in the set, but it's just kind of fallen out of favor. So nothing really there. Now that Astral's a little bit more balanced, Intercosmic Gifts, if you want to go vertical Astral, can actually give you an orb every time now. So that should make it a much more fun choice. I think that'll be good for the last few patches. And then Stand United 1, 2, 3. These augments have been overperforming for a while. We almost shipped this last patch, but then we pulled back on it because of all the other AD changes that were going on. But now that we're confident this is the right choice, you're going to get less AD per trait. You'll still get the same AP as before, but as we've been talking about, AD and AP are not equally valuable, and so this is going to make it not quite as good for people like Corky to just get a ton of extra AD.
Yep, we're buffing Lee Sin and Eye of the Storm, so now you can play those Eye of the Storm Lee Sin builds or Eye of the Storm Nomsy. So the opening up different strategy there that, hope like I think players were excited about before, wasn't working out that well with all these different buffs coming in. Hopefully this is a good strategy now. Inner Cosmic Gifts, it felt pretty bad and it's like kind of hard to notice. I mean, like when you're getting these orbs at 100%, you'll always see the orb pop out. The orb will spawn slightly higher, so it's more visible. And we didn't change the odds or anything like that, but because you're getting more of these orbs, you should see a little bit more better loot throughout the whole game.
Cool. All right, on the small side, Jade. Jade 6 is just overperforming a little bit. We don't really want to nerf Shio Yu or Anivia or anything like that, so we're just lowering the healing from Jade 6 just a little bit. This should make the decision between Jade 6 and Jade 9 a little bit closer. But yeah, just a very tiny nerf to Jade 6.
Yep, we saw that, Shio Yu's performing really well, but it's always with 6 Jade, and so we went with the trait instead of the individual unit. They should bring the trait. We're not trying to push the trait too far down or anything like that. The trait should still be very good, and Shio Yu should still be a very good strategy. Just a slight nudge.
All right, on the champ side, Karma. This is probably the biggest buff of the patch, even though we have it listed in small. Basically, her spell won't fizzle anymore. If the target dies while the ability is heading there, it'll actually explode and still do its AoE damage. It's a pretty big buff to Karma, so hopefully some Karma reroll can happen. Ash 3 gets a bit of a buff if you're willing to go an Ash 3 reroll. Maybe this opens up an Ash 3 reroll. Give that a try. Nami continues to be a little bit of a fiend. Just a small nerf here on the damage side and the healing side. We're talking really small here, but definitely with how easy Nami is to 3-star, we kind of need to lower that scaling just a little bit. Corky surprisingly gets off pretty light here. The base spell damage is only going down a little. And remember, this is only the big rocket and the magic damage part of the big rocket. So this isn't even the AD scaler. This isn't the smaller rockets. So I think Corky's going to still come out ahead pretty strong. Just a little bit of a light nerf. And we want that. We want Corky and Xayah to be premier 4-cost carries. Just tiny bit less. And then finally, Talon 3. Talon 3 is a good champion, just wasn't very exciting. And the fact that he has like a single target spell and that single target spell couldn't kill things was a little embarrassing. So definitely getting a big buff here. So Talon 3 can kill things with this spell.
Yeah, Karma, when the unit dies, the explosion will still hit the units around it. She locks in her target basically when she's launching the thing. So now with Karma getting better here, Ash getting better, maybe there's a Jade reroll comp out there somewhere where you can make your statues very beefy. You have a really big Gnar for your front line, that kind of thing. It's possible. I'm pretty excited to play some Ash that Mort played with me on Double Up the other day. I think it's still good. And then for Corky, this is what we would consider between like a small and a medium nerf. It should hit Corky like a decent amount where the rockets will do a lot less damage. We didn't want to nerf any sort of like AD percentage scaling on anything like that. I mean, or on our premier cannoneer of the set, basically. We want Deathblade to be good on Corky. That's kind of the goal here. So we're nerfing the base spell damage, which nerfs his builds with, Giant Slayer and Infinity Edge a little bit more. And on Talon, this looks like a really big buff, but it's a stab on one target. That thing should really, really hurt when you hit Talon 3, so it'll kill.
Yep, cool. On the 5-cost side, Aoshin 1 underperforming a bit. We know 240 was too strong. The mana nerf, the fact that he doesn't drain as much mana, was also a big nerf. So we're just giving him a little bit of that back so that 225, hopefully this brings Aoshin back. We're not buffing Aoshin 2. The Aoshin buff 1 makes it easier to get into Aoshin 2. So hopefully that's just enough here. Pyke, this is probably the most confusing patch note I've written in a long time. Allow me to explain. If you've ever looked at Pyke's tooltip, his spell damage is something like 250, 400, 5,000. So he hits really hard. The problem is, if you're in the execute threshold range, instead of doing the damage, it just says, hey, I kill you and hit you for true damage. The problem is 5,000 with 100% execute threshold was always just hitting the target for their health. So Pike would like go hit a 2-star Zaya, and instead of hitting for 5,000, was hitting for 1,200. This means that things like Bloodthirster and Gunblade, you weren't healing up, and it made Pike 3 kind of not very good. So by lowering the execute threshold, as weird as that seems, Pike 3 will no longer execute and instead get that full 5,000 damage, leading to those very high numbers and those resets, and hopefully should be a good thing here, and Pike should hit really, really hard. But yeah, it's a very weird, confusing patch note for sure. And then finally, Yasuo. This was just some weird, bizarre situations we didn't really like, where like Yasuo would start his execute on the Aoshin that had started channeling, and then while he was doing that execute animation, the Aoshin would kill him, and it felt really bad. So now, if Yasuo starts the execute, you win the fight. And so Yasuo will be invulnerable, and he'll finish off that execution.
Yep. Oh, always feels bad because that animation takes really long, and if you're taking damage during that, it's so weird. The Pike one, it's gonna be really confusing at first, but once you see the numbers and when Pike's is hitting everything for like 7,000 damage, you'll understand.
Yep. Cool. On the Augment side, Cluttered Mind can now only be offered on 2-1. I think literally the only time you wanted Cluttered Mind on 3-2 was if you were running Cruel Pact. If you looked at like the tactics.tools numbers, the difference between the 2-1 and 3-2 was massive. So just removing that bad situation. Late game specialist, just a small quality of life so that when you finally level the 9, you don't have to spend 4 to 6 seconds picking up all the gold. It just goes straight into your account, making that augment a little easier to use. And then finally, Reckless Spending was a very hard augment to commit to on 2-1. We think the new augment is better, but at 2-1 is just really hard to commit to, so it'll only be offered on 3-2 and 4-3, so or 4-2.
Yep. For late game specialists, when you're playing this and you're typically going fast 9 and you really need to like spend all of your time transitioning on that round that you go level 9, felt really bad to have to go run around and pick up all the gold first, and then now you only have 25 seconds left to transition your entire comp, and so that was not great. So this should feel a lot better.
Yep. And then finally, a few bug fixes. I'll just power through these quick. Sona's ability target is hit by a Zephyr. Sona will now pick the next furthest unit instead of waiting for that target to land. Cool. Thresh no longer occasionally fails to cast his ability if he's hit by Zephyr. Cool. Nunu, now equipped with Radiant RFC, will now actually eat properly. Great. Improved Bard's accuracy while searching for the largest clump. This change only affects situations where Bard's enemies were all isolated. Great. Deja will search in a wider line when searching for most enemies in a line. Cool. Verdant Veil will no longer fail to prevent Frozen Heart's attack speed slow on away boards. We love away boards. Those totally don't ever cause bugs. Star Up VFX indicators will now update more accurately for players with Pandora's Bench. Cool. I'm glad we fixed it. And then finally, Siphon's Bite can no longer still be dodged in specific situations. So hopefully for real, Siphon's Bite can no longer be dodged. So there you go.
Yeah. Just one thing on the Deja thing. Deja's tooltip does say she aims at the largest clump. This is actually supposed to say that she hits the most enemies or aims at the most enemies in a line. We're aware of this issue. We will update it for the next patch, but for this patch, it'll still say that, but that's why sometimes you might think it's weird targeting. With this change, she will feel a lot better and like kind of just make more sense. But the tooltip will still kind of be misleading.
Cool. And that's it. Small patch. Nothing too crazy. Like I said, we're at the end, so we're trying not to thrash and bash too much. Should be slightly healthier. Should be a lot of what you expect. Mostly buffs. Yeah. Should be pretty solid.
Yep, with the meta settling, opening up more ways to play. It's kind of what we always say when we're down to our last few patches, but hopefully, players come up with some really exciting builds for this patch.
Yep. Cool. All right, that's going to do it from us. 12.16 will be the next patch. Expect another smaller one. I imagine we'll just be making last few adjustments. We don't do crazy for fun stuff before the end of the set, so like don't expect anything like that in 12.16. It'll just be a small patch, because also 12.16 is when the mid set goes to PBE, so we'll be dealing with that, and that'll be crazy, and that's on 12.17. So yeah,
It's so soon.
yeah, yeah. At first, it felt like time was dragging on a bit, but now it's already
Ah,
here, and of course, I had to bring that up. So
ah,
hey.
hey, nope, nope.
And on that note, we're going to end this. So, all right. That's going
All
to do it
right.
from us. Until next time, take it easy.